Hello and welcome to Rajya Sabha Television. You're watching The Big Picture with me, Frank Rausen Pereira. In his customary joint address to Parliament, President Ramnath Kovind on Thursday outlined the NDA government's objectives for a new India. In his address at the Central Hall of Parliament, the President highlighted how the government is moving ahead to create a strong, secure and inclusive India. This was President Kovind's first address to a joint sitting of both houses of Parliament after the recently concluded Lok Sabha elections. During his speech, President Kovind outlined measures to realize Prime Minister Narendra Modi's slogan of Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas and Sabka Vishwas. Kovind's speech is seen as outlining the priorities and the roadmap for fulfilling the objectives of a new India by 2022. On this edition of The Big Picture, we will analyze the government's focus on a new India. Joining me on the program today are Jayant Das Gupta, former policy planner, Ministry of Commerce and Industry, K. Badrinath, senior journalist, and Bhanuchandar Nagarajan, former consultant, World Bank, Washington, D.C. Thank you to all my guests for joining me on this edition of The Big Picture. All right, Bhanu, I'd like to begin the program with you. Talking about New India, let's start with the youngest member on the panel. What is the idea of a new India as far as the present government is concerned?
The idea of holistic welfare, Yogakshema is the Sanskrit word for it, which involves like physical, material, and mental well-being. So I think the government, though when we talk about prosperity, it's mostly on economic terms, but I think there's a holistic idea that actually the government is moving towards. In terms of the economy, they are talking about a $5 trillion economy, which would involve like a growth of around like 12-13% on nominal terms. So even if you take like inflation to be like 4%, it will be like 8% to 9%, which is a significant increase in pace. So that is one. Then there is a significant the president's address. It was mentioned about the focus on human capital in terms of Ayushman Bharat, Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao, the number of seats in higher education going to be increased, all the human capital issues. And there is also like the welfare issues on like promoting yoga and so on and so forth. I think the president's address did not mention it, but I think the thrust of the government is to have a all-round development in the economy, in human capital, in infrastructure, in mental well-being and everything. So I think that is the thrust of the government so far.
Okay, let's take it on one by one then. Jayant Das Gupta, $5 trillion economy by 2024. That's the goal as far as Prime Minister Narendra Modi is concerned. How are we going to achieve that? Because over the last few months, we've seen that we have not grown at the pace we would have liked to. So how are we going to address this issue of reaching a $5 trillion economy mark by 2024?
I think the first point that needs to be remembered is that if we have to have close to 10% growth, we have to have investments. And what is it that is preventing investments from being made in larger quantum? And that brings us to the issue of reforms that are required. The first reform that comes to mind in this context is about tax reforms. The corporate income tax, for instance, which can energize the corporate sector to invest in Indian industries, foreign direct investment to come in greater quantities, that would be dependent to a great extent on tax reforms. The second point is about ease of doing business. Whether it is a small scale unit or a medium scale or a large scale investment, it requires a lot of government approvals and different kinds of permissions. So that needs to be, I think, compressed, and the closer we get to a single window system, the better it is. In fact, this reminds me of an announcement made yesterday that small restaurants and traders will perhaps be exempted from the licensing requirements. So this is a step in the right direction, but a lot needs to be done in this context. The second point is about reforms in the banking sector, because if there is a constriction on the flow of money it would hamper economic growth. And that leads us to the question of the NBFCs, which are in bad shape at the moment. It also tells us that the banks need recapitalization so that they can lubricate the wheels of growth and it can move forward. And the final thing which I think needs to be borne in mind is that whatever we do by way of attracting investments, we should not forget the employment aspect.
Right.
That jobs are necessary, they will give a fillip to consumption demand, and that will in turn feed into greater investment flows.
Sure.
So that also needs to be done, and the previous panelist has mentioned about skilling. That will go a long way towards providing jobs to a certain section of the people. But
Okay.
labor intensive industries also need to be encouraged at the same time, so that there is greater absorption of the unemployed in these industries.
All right, all right. So, job creation or unemployment has been a major problem as far as the government is concerned, and the government also said that it's going to do several things really to try and address this particular problem. K. Badrinath, do you believe that along with job creation, you know, the president also spoke about a new India where equal opportunities to progress are available to every person? How important is that?
See, in effect, actually, the presidential address is very grand in the vision, and he has outlined virtually the work program for the next 5 years. In that context, opportunities, providing opportunities to everybody is a big component. In that, it is also very important because now the government wants to come about with a new policy for industrial policy. In the context of, a lot of jobs may be lost because of, coming in of technology, artificial intelligence, Internet of Things and all that. So more and more people need to be reoriented for their opportunities to be exploited. So for that to happen, perhaps the issue of providing opportunity for everyone is a big focus perhaps for this government. How will that happen is an issue. One, the skills development is a big issue which has been picked up by both the UPA government earlier and also the NDA government now, which is doing it for the second term. In that, the skilling of India is the biggest, determining factor as to whether we will be able to provide opportunities to everybody or not. You have a big population to feed, but and also we talk about demographic dividends, potential and all that. Unless you are skilled, unless our people who are coming out of the educational institutes are fit enough to be employed, how do we talk about even providing opportunities?
Right.
There are several surveys globally to say that many of our graduates, postgraduates, engineers cannot be employed anywhere.
Sure. Sure.
Because the quality of education, quality of human resource that we are producing. So, skills development should be a big focus, as even the president has mentioned it in a big way. And so, henceforth, my guess is skills development will be a determining factor for allowing people to getting enough
Opportunities. All right. Skill development is a key focus area going forward, is what you're suggesting. All right. Let's broaden the scope of the discussion now and look at a few more aspects. I thought a large chunk of the speech was dedicated to poverty alleviation. If you look at the speech, Banu talks about every poor person will have a pakka roof over his head. Housing for all is something that was spoken about. We'll have access to clean fuel. We'll have access to electricity connection. Of course, the definition of electrification in India has been questioned by many, but every village has been electrified now. At least that is something that we can proudly talk home or drive home about. No poor person will be compelled to defecate in the open is also what the speech talks about, and also will have access to medical facilities. So poverty alleviation is going to be a major focus area, it clearly looks like.
Absolutely. In fact, many of this is mentioned in the BJP's manifesto going to the elections, and many programs have on these have already started, like were started in the previous government. So it is going to be like extension and completion of many of these activities. For example, the Awas Yojana, the housing, and Nal Pe Jal, which is now a mission. By 2022, they are planning to like provide 14 crore households with drinking water supply, which is like, if you look at it, it's like 6 times the electrification project, which is like 2.6 crore how villages were electrified. So this is incredible. In 2.6 crore households were electrified. So this is incredible scale we are talking about. So what is also going to happen is some of these activities that have happened in the previous government, the benefits of those will be reaped by this government. Okay, so like they usually say, like the basement of the building was constructed in the first term. During the second term, the house will be built. So in fact, the PM actually used the words expectations and aspirations. So in fact, like if you look at the tone of the government first, like it's very aspirational. They're talking about a $5 trillion economy. So like what my previous panelists talked about, like skill development, empowering women. Our female labor rate participation is now 20%. China is 64%. So like, you know, we spoke about this in a previous program as well. So that is also inclusivity, like focusing on that, giving access to technology, which will actually empower people to like go about their jobs. So all of these poverty alleviation and human capital improvement activities that were actually initiated in the first term will be carried over and completed in the second term, and the benefits of what they have done previously is also going to benefit them in the second term. One quick point: recently there was a study by Azim Premji University which said that the job elasticity, which is basically what percentage increase in jobs will happen for every percentage growth in GDP. Initially it used to be like 0.4, which is like, you know, if the economy goes by 10%, the jobs will grow by 4%. So now it is like 1%, basically, which means that even if you grow by 10 percentage points, like then you will actually like get a job expansion of 1%. So which is basically due to automation and so many other factors. So how that is going to be tackled with an infusion of skill development activities, with expansion of the economy, formalization of economy, labor reforms, land reforms, so on and so forth. There's a huge, this is like talking about all of the economy, right? So how they actually tackle each of this on a mission mode will determine how we reach that $5 trillion in the next 5 years.
Absolutely. There's much to be done, much is desired also, is what Bhanu is suggesting, Jayan Dasgupta. So what should the focus be in the first 100 days? What should the long-term focus for the next 1000 days be?
There are two things which come readily to mind. The first is about the distress in the agriculture sector and the need to alleviate it by going in for reforms in the agriculture sector. And there are several which have been discussed in the recent past. One of the things is about allowing the farmers to sell their produce according to their choice and without any overheads. The Agriculture Produce Market Committee, for instance, the government has been advocating its repeal for many years, and that has not been followed by many state governments because it is a state subject after all. There is a new model act, which is the Agriculture Produce Marketing and Livestock Act model 2017, that has also not been adopted. So the burden on the farmers of paying money unnecessarily to a set of middlemen who perhaps don't add much value, that needs to be, and to a set of rent seekers, that needs to be, I think, dispensed with at the earliest. So that could be one of the goals for the first 100 days, to get the states on board. And I think the Niti Aayog had held a meeting some time ago, and there was growing consensus amongst the states to do that. The second point is about allowing contract farming to take place, which will bring in corporate investors into farming and for exploiting the downstream areas. The third issue is about infrastructure, and the topmost priority should be given to infrastructure in the agriculture sector, so that when we produce fruits, vegetables and various other perishable commodities, they can be stored, value can be added to them, and then we can take them to the market, whether domestically or abroad. So that is the infrastructure part. But infrastructure, of course, as far as roads are concerned, as far as our ports are concerned, railways, those things have been, of course, been mentioned for further expansion, because they do act as a bottleneck on economic growth. So these are some of the issues which need to be tackled.
Right.
And finally, I would say that on the first 100 days, you can set the ball rolling, you can steer the vehicle in a particular direction, but it has to pick up speed, and for that you need to have progressive policies which are outlined by the central government, but which need to be followed up, because a lot of things do get implemented at the state level. So you have to have the state level respond favorably to it, and without further wastage of time.
Sure. Talking about agriculture, Badrinath, the government has been talking about doubling the farmers' income by 2022 for a long time now, and that's clearly a good thing, because let's not forget there are about 60% of India's population that are employed in agriculture or allied work, but agriculture's contribution to the GDP is less than 20%. So addressing that problem also is going to go a long way, isn't it?
See, agriculture's contribution is around 16%.
16%.
And if you see the presidential address, he talks about investing about 25 lakh crores on rural India, mostly into farming and farming related infrastructure. My guess is that this could be a long term plan, and because he has not specified what is the time frame, means the government is yet working on this issue. Perhaps the first budget that is going to be presented by Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman should give us a fair idea as to what is going to happen on the agriculture front. Because most part of the presidential address talks either about investing heavily in rural India or on agriculture front. On the agriculture front, one big issue that brought me was creating, storage facilities in a cluster of villages. Meaning you are taking the infrastructure down, not carrying the food items across, perishable items across to the markets and network. So storage capacities are being built across the villages, which will allow the farmer not to make distress sale, and only wait for the right opportunity to sell, where he can command a better price and he can link to the market in a better way. This seems to be one big issue that is going to be attempted. Second issue is about the big focus, which you will have to watch out even in the budget, on how much money is going to be spent on the new ministry, or the spending that is going to happen on the Jal Shakti ministry, where the water resources is going to be harvested in a big way. If you recall, UPA 1 had done a big study on UPA 2 on how the resources should be managed, from spectrum to coal to telecommunication, everything. In that, one big component was water resources and land resources. Water and land resources are these two things which have not been implemented. If you recall, the Land Reform Act got stuck and it was withdrawn. And the NDA 1, that is Narendra Modi government's first term, also did not push it further for lack of consensus, and they do not have the requisite numbers in the Rajya Sabha,
Right.
which they will get only by the next year, 2020. And second issue, but the water need not wait for that. Water means 2-3 aspects of water. One is providing water to every farm, which is going to be a big issue. Second, managing the water resources in a big way, because you have a lot of drought-like situation in the patches of land across the country, which needs to be managed. Third is interlinking of rivers, which is going to happen. All that is going to be again done through the Jal Shakti ministry. Fourth aspect to the entire thing is the conservation of water, which
Right.
is going to be a big issue. If you recall, in many of the African cities, there is no water whatsoever. There is huge migration happening. Leave alone agriculture and things like that. Even for drinking water, you don't have. So taking water to the every doorstep seems to be the next target. Like you have taken the cooking gas, like you have taken the electricity connection to every village. The same way, or you want to connect every village to the
Yeah, har
urban
nal
center.
mein pani is what they're
Har
talking
nal
about.
mein pani.
Yes.
So this seems to be the case, and my guess is this is going to be a big focus, and that is going to trigger and have a huge cumulative impact on the economy.
Sure. Yes, Manu, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, quickly on agriculture, it is not 60% anymore, it's 45% of the people are dependent on agriculture. In agriculture, we have actually already gone to an era of surpluses, like, that's why, like, we have like these price problems, farmers issues, so on and so forth, excess inventory. One quirky thing about agriculture is, the next decade is going to be that of agribusiness, modern agribusiness that we have in European countries. That's what many economists say. But in our agriculture universities, a surprising thing is happening. The demand for trained agriculture scientists and agriculture students is twice that of capacity. But still, like, students are not signing up to go to agriculture universities. So it's like there's a mindset issue that is causing this demand supply mismatch. So, like, once, like, our students get to know that it is more marketing issue or more science and technology issue, I think like lot more people will actually come into agribusiness and actually take it as a proper profession and move it forward. So a couple of other things. In fact, like in the next 100 days, the Prime Minister in his recent meeting with various chief ministers in the Pragati meeting has asked them to prepare targets for exports, like how to expand your exports from each of these states. So that is actually going to be something I think the government will work on in the near future. Also, the ease of doing business. Okay, once actually. I think there will be like we are now at 77, right? We were at 144 before in the World Bank Ease of Business doing report. So I think like the stated target is to like make it come below 50, the rank. So I think like there is going to be a significant focus on that. So and also like one of the biggest job creators is infrastructure, other than manufacturing. So these are the things that will help in manufacturing, but in infrastructure, so like all the infrastructure programs that we talked about, the Nal Pe Jal, the expansion of roads and highways, the number of airports that are being modernized, the electrification of railways, so on and so forth. So these are all also going to be job creators. I think there will be a lot of thrust on infrastructure based job creation going forward in the near future.
All right. So we've touched upon the economy, we've touched upon the rural sector, agriculture. We've also spoken about poverty alleviation and social sector measures. Really, let's talk about something else now. Ambassador Jayan Das Gupta, the speech also spoke about how India will provide leadership to global development with a new zeal and confidence. We are to host the G20 summit come 2022. We are also going to be a part of the G7 as a special invitee this time around in France. So clearly, our stock at the global level too is increasing.
The size of the market of India and the way it is growing, by 2027 we will be the most populous nation on earth, and we will continue to grow till about 2050 or 2060 if the current trends are followed. So that itself is a huge attraction for global investors. The second factor is the large numbers of people who have become a part of the middle class, and our poverty alleviation programs, the kind of success that they have had, they have pulled many millions out of poverty and into the ranks of the middle class. So these are all factors which are on the positive side. And that is why I think if you look at the G20, we are privileged to be the host for the next meeting. But we must also remember that we have perhaps the lowest per capita income amongst the G20 countries. And that is something which we need to rectify. We need to move up, and we need to provide better livelihoods for the whole country. So that is a large, very difficult task, but we have taken the right steps. So it will be a long, arduous task, but we will surely progress fast. On this issue of G7 also, it used to be seen basically as a rich man's club, but since it is a global village now, there are aspects which, if they affect one country, they affect the rest of the world. For instance, the current trade war which is going on between the US and China has had its impact on many other countries around the world.
Right.
And global growth itself is slowing down as a consequence of that. And the IMF chief has also been on record saying that this can't go on for too long.
Sure.
So we have to act in a concerted manner, not only in terms of growth, but also to tackle climate change, which is going to be more and more, I think, difficult to tackle if we don't take steps right away.
Okay.
And as Mr. Badrinath has mentioned, the water problem, about management, about conservation, that is something which which has been given the topmost priority, I think, by the government, and that we need to put greater efforts into making it a success. One of the things which is now being talked about is to revive our almost dried up rivers, because only after the water starts flowing in them will the aquifers get charged and the hinterland get a higher water table. And there are many instances of community action. I was reminded of something which 20,000 women
In Vellore.
in Vellore, exactly. That is something, a shining example of community action, of participation by the government, because the funds were provided under MNREGA, and the water table has risen between 6 to 40 feet. Rice, which was not getting cultivated for many years there, has started getting cultivated. Sure. So that is the kind of thing which we need to put through to synergize government programs in different areas.
Such examples abound, but it has to be done on a large scale, really,
That's
and the community needs to get involved if we have to take the nation forward. That's absolutely true. All right, Badrinath, let's not forget in all of this, from the international community, let's talk about India's prowess on the space front. ISRO has delivered tremendously. There's much to be done as far as our space frontiers are concerned as well, as far as New India is concerned.
Yes, space industry has been a big focus for this government, and perhaps it's not only seen as a technology provider or something, but it will also provide direct and indirect benefit to the communities. For example, the President referred to the kind of losses, property as well as life losses that we could prevent during the cyclone in Orissa because of the kind of data that we have got from our satellites and our infrastructure that we have in this space. Secondly, India has emerged as the most cost-effective, space industry nation in the world today. And also, it can actually, provide a big trigger for the domestic as well as the foreign players to get into the industry in India, because it's very cost effective. And in fact, if you recall, one of the launches, Chandrayaan, was even cheaper than the Mars movie that you have seen. So the making of Mars movie was much more expensive than Chandrayaan. So the point I'm trying to make is we have a way with technology, we have a way with the resources, and so my guess is both direct as well as indirect benefits that we have.
Right.
And also it has commercial applications in a
certainly.
big way.
Certainly. All right. With that, I'll have to call it a wrap on this edition of The Big Picture. I'd like to thank all my guests for joining me on the program and putting things in perspective for us. That's it from me. See you again next time.